U.S. did add 187,000 jobs in July, slightly less than the 200,000 expected. Unemployment ticks down to 3.5. Joining us this morning from the White House with reaction first on CNBC is Julie Su, acting U.S. Secretary of Labor. Madam Secretary, good to have you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. Good morning.
Just your thoughts about the deceleration here and whether it's happening in an environment where the labor market can stay resilient or not.
Right. So this is an example of what slow and steady growth looks like, right? We've seen now over 13.4 million jobs added since the president came into office. This is a number that reflects that we are continuing to grow jobs at the same time that we continue to see historically low unemployment rates. This is still less than 4% for the longest stretch since the 1960s. It's been over a year and a half of such low unemployment rates at the same time that we continue to see very high labor force participation rate, especially among prime age workers, ages 25 to 54. Altogether, a strong report and sign of good, strong, steady growth and why the President Biden's economic policies are working for the country.
You mentioned labor force. 62.6 was in line, but the market really would love to see a 63 handle. We haven't really gotten that in a couple of years, and I'm wondering whether you think there's the ingredients for a significant portion of labor to return to the supply.
So we have seen workers return to the labor market not only at pre-pandemic rates, but above pre-pandemic rates. Back in 2008, after that Great Recession, it took 10 years to return to this level. So we've seen a return. We've seen a return across communities. Like women have powered the economic recovery. They were devastated during COVID, have come back at record numbers. And at this point, I think that what it's going to take to further increase labor force participation is going to be addressing some of the structural issues that keep workers out of the labor market. Things like child care, right? Affordable, reliable care that impacts the women's ability to participate in the labor market. But short of that, we've definitely seen people return to work. It's clear that workers want to work, that they feel confident about their prospects in the labor market, that people are leaving jobs for better jobs, and all of these things continue to be signs of a good, strong economy.
Average hourly earnings, those rose 0.4%, 4.4% annual pace here. We know the Fed has been in this tightening cycle, is looking to bring inflation down. Also know that the administration has this Bidenomics approach of working from the middle out. So what's your response to that number and the fact that wages do continue to be stronger and potentially continue to contribute to that higher inflation rate?
Right. Thanks for saying that, right? For President Biden, the economic plan, Bidenomics, relies on this idea that we can build an economy that leaves no one behind, that working from the middle out and the bottom up rather than the top down is the most solid way to build a strong, resilient economy in which everyone gets their fair chance. Part of this has been real wage growth. And what we're seeing with that is consumer spending, right, which has also been really key to this economic recovery. People feeling confident enough to do things like, when you look at this jobs report, people are going back to normal, using things like going get their hair cut, going to the nail salon. Those are sectors in which we have seen some growth in the last month, and they're signs that when you increase wages, especially for the lower and middle income groups, that is both an equity issue but also a strong economy issue.
Although, Madam Secretary, just to follow along those lines, when you look at polls and there's dissatisfaction with the economy seeming to focus mostly on inflation and how much prices have risen in recent years, how do you think the very tight labor market plays into that if, in fact, that's considered to be part of the input to higher prices?
Well, so we're also seeing the inflation rate slow, right? We're seeing that prices are lower now than they were a year ago, significantly, whether that's in things like gas or your basic groceries. And I think that the combination of workers having more wages that are outpacing inflation, therefore giving them more buying power, and the tight labor market you mentioned, which is that workers can make more demands in the workplace. They can choose jobs that have the conditions that we think about as being part of a good job, right? Good wages, security, upward mobility, benefits, security and retirement. That those kinds of things are all part of what the president says when he says he wants to build an economy in which workers do well. And when workers do well, employers still prosper and America is stronger.
So what does that mean in terms of some of the labor strife that we have seen take place, whether it's UPS and the Teamsters, where I realize they've just struck a tentative deal and now those workers will vote on it, whether it's the writers and the actors, or perhaps more pressingly, at least from a Wall Street standpoint, the negotiations that are taking place between the UAW and the big three automakers, where the union's making, quote unquote, to use its own words, audacious wage and benefit demands. And you have the likes of GM countering and saying that this is going to threaten their ability to do what's right for the long-term benefit of the team. How are you navigating that? What is the role that you're playing in some of these negotiations?
So we have seen that the UPS and Teamsters reach a tentative agreement, right? We often see that collective bargaining process, it's not always pretty as it's going through. People say things during the process, but as we've seen in a couple of very high-profile, big examples, the collective bargaining process works. So the UPS and Teamsters came to a tentative agreement affecting 340,000 working people. The ports on the West Coast, right, 29 ports affecting 22,000 workers, also reached a tentative agreement. Mm-hmm. And for UAW, right, and that conversation, that they're still at the bargaining table and trying to resolve. And a lot of these are, they're tough issues, right? They're grappling with things like workers have worked through a pandemic. Many employers have seen record profits, and those union employers coming together to try to figure out what does a good job look like? How are we going to do right by working people, build a stronger industry, think about the long term? All of those things are happening at the bargaining table, and we're seeing good results. The president believes, as I do, in the collective bargaining process. That includes, the right of workers to exercise all the rights that they have in that space. And the examples that we've seen that have resolved demonstrate just why that process works.
But what is the role that you yourself, as acting labor secretary in the administration, what is the role that you're playing? How active are you on this, especially when you think about something like the UAW, where the sticking point is going to be this shift to EVs, where maybe perhaps not as many people are needed longer term to put those cars together?
Right. So the president's economic plan is based on a belief that we can both do right by our climate, right, address the climate crisis, and create good jobs in all communities. And these kinds of transitions also do, they create issues that require some amount of planning and change. That's partly what the collective bargaining process allows, is for people to come together to address that kind of change. We get involved if our involvement can be productive, if it can be helpful. We've seen situations in which that is the case. We've also seen times in which to trust the process means to allow the parties to do what they know how to do best, which is resolve their issues together at the table.
All right. I mean, we brought you on to talk about the jobs number, but the UAW negotiations are so key. Does the White House eventually have to comment on whether or not a 40% pay hike over 4 years is constructive or feasible or responsible?
Well, I think the only people who can decide whether a contract is fair is the members, right, is the workers themselves. But as we have seen in the examples so far, this White House, this administration, the most pro-worker, pro-union administration in history, as the president says, respects the process and respects the ability of parties to come together to resolve them. For the UAW, they are fairly early on in their negotiations, and we've seen in examples that we can get involved and be productive in the right situations and know when to stay out and let the parties figure it out themselves.